And they're actually doing pharmaceutical counterfeiting. What they've done is they etch on each one of those little tablets or capsules that pharmaceuticals make. They put the code for where this was made and how it was made. It has the supply chain written on the capsule with an atomic force microscope. And so nobody else can read it except them. And if there's a counterfeiter somewhere, you know, you can find out right away, hey, this isn't real. You got to have this on there to be real. And in other countries like China, you know, they have counterfeiting of pharmaceuticals as high as 50%. In our country, it's like 1%. But even 1%, the amount of pharmaceutical stuff going on in the United States is still pretty big. You know, so they've actually, this one real application that's taking place using nanotechnology. Here's just an example of a molecular beam epitaxy system. I was at University of Texas, Austin, a couple of years ago. And also at JPL, I've been there, I've done consulting there, and they have a whole row of these things. They're very expensive machines. And what they can do is they can actually lay down layer by layer. It's like a vapor deposition system of individual molecules placed so perfectly that out of a quadrillion atoms, that's a billion atoms, only one atom will be out of place, you know, which is just unbelievable precision. And that's actually been capable of that since the 1960s. And they actually make the laser reader on your compact disc players by this method. And most people aren't aware of that. So it's amazing technology. Oops, too fast. Okay, here, the world's smallest petrol engine. This was just developed in the last year or so, and you know, fits on the end of your finger, and a single squirt of lighter fuel runs for 2 years. And so you can imagine, you know, they're expecting that we can have our cell phones running for a year or two before you have to replace it, the battery, you know. So that sounds real nice. So, you know, I'm focusing a little bit on battery life, on energy. How do you generate energy with nanotechnology? So here you have the power shirt. Yes, the power shirt, you know. So you have these tiny nano film on the fibers that by rubbing together as you're walking and moving, you're rubbing these fibers and generating electricity for your cell phone, for whatever you need. Now, but then, you know, there's something really simpler than that. Other companies working on that. When you're walking, you know, that's a lot of weight. That's 160 pounds every time you step on the heel of your shoe. And so using piezoelectricity, that's squeezed. By squeezing, you generate electricity so you can power your cell phones that way as well. You know, so all these things are happening, so you don't have to worry about recharging and batteries, you know, for personal items anymore. And that could also heat up your shirt, you know, that sort of thing, or cool it, you know. So, but now this is really important. What's happened is just recently, scientists implanted the first functional glucose biofuel cell in a living animal, eliminating the need to surgically remove and replace a power-generating device for implants. So, and I think, well, what does that really mean? Well, think about all the cyborg stuff you read in science fiction, how you have like a man that's part metal, part machine, and part human. No, that's not going to happen anymore, because we're already going into a biomimetics where we use nature to create what we need, because nature, over its millions, billions of years of evolution, has already figured out these things. And so now they're actually able to use the glucose and other types of like ATP and that sort of thing going on inside the cell to actually power our implants. And they're already up to 6.5 microvolts. and you need 10 microvolts to power a pacemaker. So they're almost there. So you won't have to have them replaced or removed, that sort of thing. So pretty soon all this stuff is happening inside the body. And no more surgeries, that sort of thing. Now, also the first nanotech synthetic organ transplant, I thought this was really neat. And this is just announced in this last week, just a few days ago. So, hear it first. So this is a way of making a nanocomposite that forms a scaffold of a windpipe, a person's windpipe, and then it's seeded with adult stem cells actually from the person's own bone marrow. And so you don't need a donor anymore for organs because it's just taken from your own stem cells and grown on these nanocomposite scaffolds until it's complete, and then these things disappear and you have your new windpipe. And now in the future, all the organs will be replaceable that way. I'm quite involved with some of the people in the medical field that have done a lot of this work, and I've talked to them at the conferences that I attend in this area. And basically, they feel that by 2015, we'll be able to replace any of our internal organs, have them regrown out of our own cells so the body won't reject them, and we'll be able to do all the organs except the brain and the nervous system. That might take a few years longer. So now, one thing I'm excited to share with you is the world's smallest radio. It was recently done, actually in 2007, but Alex Settle, the physicist, they actually used a single carbon nanotube. Now, the one thing I was sending around, that little, was I sending a buckyball around? No, not that one. Let me, here. We're going to have a raffle later on, so I definitely need this. No, that's the brain gear. Okay. Yeah. But anyway, I'll pass this around. Actually, what I did is if you scale up a buckyball, that's really a carbon-60 atom. We thought we knew all about carbon, in the 1900s, the 20th century. And it turned out in the 1990s suddenly, or late 1980s, we suddenly found out, hey, we don't know everything about carbon because there's a carbon-60 atom. And it's like there's 60 points with the, holding each other together. And then I put 2 more inside just for the fun of it, because I want to show people the additive layer technique. How did you get that ball inside there? Well, I grew it that way. I didn't have to put it in. But the point is that if you look at just the outside, that's a buckyball. And that's the same carbon nanotube. If you have a graphene sheet of pure carbon, and then you curl it up, you get a carbon nanotube. If you curve it up into a ball, you get a buckyball. And so pass that around. So now, so a single carbon nanotube is like a couple of nanometers in width. It can be longer. They're trying to make them longer. I could go on about this for quite a while, about carbon nanotubes. But the important thing here is that he actually was able to have the single carbon nanotube act as a complete radio. The antenna, the modulator, all the different aspects of a radio are automatically in that carbon nanotube, so that it'll act as an antenna and then amplify and to a speaker, and you can actually receive the radio signals. And you can imagine a carbon nanotube like this. If you took 10,000 of these next to each other, it would be still as thin as a human hair. That's how tiny this thing is. And so you can have these things running inside the human body, where you can communicate and make it do things to fix problems inside the arteries or whatever. Those are some of the things they're looking at. But the whole idea is to have a radio that's that tiny. It's just phenomenal. And so, let's see. We used to have, a vacuum tube radio, and then we go down from 10 centimeters down to 5, down to 1 millimeter for wireless sensor. Now you're down to, well, the length here, they made it 200 nanometers long, but it's really like only a few nanometers wide. But now what was really cool is that the first thing that they received over the radio was Eric Clapton's Layla. And so this is, let me see it. Is it working? I might have to double click. Do you hear how there's a lot of static there? That's because it's not in a vacuum. It needs to be in a vacuum. And, but that was the first historic moment that has been recorded of hearing on the world's smallest radio, Eric Clapton, Layla. So I think that's pretty cool. Let's see if this will stop. Okay. Now, also I should say that I mentioned that, you have the vacuum, you need a vacuum for that. Well, it's almost like you're back to the vacuum tubes of the first radios, but much more advanced and much, much smaller. You don't have the big vacuum tubes anymore. But that also made me think, well, really with the static that you hear, even the best radio signal, you'll still hear a very, very tiny hiss. And anybody know what that is? That's the cosmic background radiation from the Big Bang, from the creation of the universe, that's still going on. And you can hear that little hiss, and that's what that is, So that's kind of cool, So now, synthetic biology, what is this world coming to? Whoever thinks, it'd be a course in synthetic biology, But the amazing thing is Craig Ventnor, the one who worked on the human genome, decoding the human genome, his company made the world's first synthetic cell from man-made DNA. And what's amazing about that is that here's this man-made synthetic DNA that's going to empower the cell to make cells from a different animal than the one that was put into it. And so it powers up. And when they actually made it, what happened is it didn't work. Something went wrong. So they had to go through, they wrote a computer program that would go step by step through the whole, it's 1 million bits of information in this DNA, the synthetic man-made DNA. And they found out there was one typo. One of those little pieces was out of place. And as soon as they fixed it, and then they rebooted, in the cell, it came alive and created the first organism that's, made from a synthetic human DNA. So some of that can be a little scary, what kind of things are coming. So now, how far can we predict into the future? Like some Japanese corporations actually have business plans looking 200-300 years ahead. And I thought, well, that sounds crazy. But then I heard this amazing story. I read about it some time ago from Oxford University. What happened is that they had this large hall that had a roof with all these huge wooden beams, and it was old. It was built 300 years ago, and they realized that they needed to replace those beams, but the beams that size weren't available anywhere. Nobody made those kind of beams anymore.